Another special guest today, a return visitor, Deputy National Security Advisor Anne Neuberger, who's going to speak to you briefly about cyber threats. She only has time for just a very few questions because she has to run off to a meeting. I will always be the bad cop with that. Come on up, and then we'll, of course, do a full briefing.
Good afternoon, everyone. So we want to take a moment to encourage organizations to be on guard for malicious cyber activity in advance of the holiday weekend. To be clear, we have no specific threat information or information regarding attacks this weekend, but what we do have is history. And in the past, over holiday weekends, attackers have sometimes focused on security operations centers that may be understaffed, or a sense that there are fewer key personnel on duty as they may be on vacation. And indeed, a long weekend can sometimes make attackers feel they have extra time to navigate in a network before they are detected. So as the long weekend comes, we want to raise awareness, and this need for awareness is particularly for critical infrastructure owners and operators who operate critical services for Americans. As part of the administration's ongoing efforts to secure our America's defenses against cybercrime and ransomware, on Tuesday, the FBI and DHS's CISA released an advisory outlining specific steps that organizations and individuals can take to really increase their defenses and be safe online. You can find this on CISA's one-stop shop for information, stopransomware.gov, and we encourage you to please visit the site, read the advisory, and take those critical steps. Organizations and individuals should be on alert now because criminals sometimes lay in their steps in advance and begin their planning. Now, I want to walk through a few specific things you can do right now to protect against possible attacks and to ensure that you can recover quickly in the event that an organization is compromised. Specifically, I'd like to call on executives to please bring together your leadership teams and run through this set of activities to ensure that your organizations are as secure as they need to be before the holiday weekend. First, update and patch all software. We continuously see attackers compromising organizations based on vulnerabilities that are known for which patches are available. Second, ensure that individuals have strong passwords in place. And indeed, for key personnel, encourage them to change their passwords now. Third, implement multi-factor authentication, particularly for key personnel and IT staff. Multi-factor authentication is something more than a password. It could be a biometric, like a fingerprint. It could be a code that comes off software. Last week, President Biden hosted key executives from technology companies as part of his efforts to really secure America online. And a number of those executives pointed to multi-factor authentication as preventing 80 to 90% of cyber attacks. Indeed, because it is such a helpful way to address cyber vulnerabilities, it's one of the 5 things President Biden mandated be rolled out across the federal government quickly as part of his executive order in May. Fourth, review your incident response plan and do a drill against it to ensure that if a compromise occurs, you're ready to react and respond quickly. And finally, ensure that you have up-to-date backups and that they're segregated from a network so that they're not accessible to an attacker. There are a couple of other good practices to do. Security teams should proactively hunt on a network. It's kind of like a digital version of walking the beat. Look for any initial signs of compromise or anything unusual on a network. And everyone should be extra vigilant for phishing emails and clicking on links that may be new or something that looks unusual. I want to repeat that we have no information about any specific threats or attacks, so the purpose of this is really to raise awareness before a holiday weekend, given the history of increased criminal cyber activity during holiday weekends. As always, CISA, FBI, and other U.S. government partners are positioned to support any organization that needs it. Please visit stopransomware.gov and follow the practices that you see. Taking a step back for a moment, the Biden administration is committed to addressing cyber threats to the country. And indeed, as I mentioned last week, President Biden hosted executives from technology companies, education firms, critical infrastructure, and others to focus on addressing the root causes of cyber. The technology companies in particular announced a set of commitments online to address some of the root causes of technology vulnerabilities and improve security of their products. Thank you. Wishing you a safe and enjoyable holiday weekend.
It's been more than 2 months since the President's meeting with President Putin. Have the Russians done anything to crack down on ransomware attacks?
Thank you for the question. The discussions with the Russians continue. As President Biden noted, he's looking for action with regard to addressing cyber activity, and we continue to look for that. That being said, we also need to look at our own activity, and it's the reason for this today, to ensure that we're doing everything we can to lock our digital doors and ensure that our networks and our organizations are as safe as they need to be online.
Jackie? Have you guys determined who is responsible for the attack on the State Department a couple of weeks ago?
I won't address specific incidents here. We're certainly looking at that, and we're also focused on, as I noted, the rollout of the 5 particular technologies across the federal government so we can confidently reduce the risk of such continued attacks. Those are on a tight timeline. So far, both CISA and Commerce's NIST have met every single timeline, and those key technologies are scheduled to be rolled out within 6 months of the President's executive order last May. So we're really tracking October and November to ensure that we've modernized our defenses across the federal government.
Do you believe that the patches that need to have been done have happened across agencies?
That work continues. As I noted in a prior discussion, there's a great deal of work to modernize our federal networks. They were not where they needed to be. And that's one of the reasons that the President mandated such aggressive, we believe achievable, but aggressive steps to bring them up to where they need to be to meet the level the attackers focus on those networks.
Jen?
Some of my colleagues at Bloomberg reported today about identifying some of the Chinese state-sponsored hackers who are behind an alleged NSA, co-opting an alleged NSA backdoor in products from Juniper Networks, which has obviously been known about for quite a few years. What are the administration's policies around the use of backdoors, and what are the guidelines, if any, about NSA's ability to insert backdoors into U.S. tech companies' products?
As you know, that's been as you noted, that's been an old story that's been reported, and I think we've continuously noted that there isn't substantiation for it. Focusing on supply chain for a moment, the supply chain and the need to ensure that software is as secure as possible is something that's absolutely a priority of this administration. I think you saw in the President's executive order, he mandated putting in place certain steps to ensure secure supply chains for products, and those are rolling out. Indeed, as well, I think you saw several of the announcements that came out of the summit last week. So we're absolutely committed to working with technology companies to ensure that their products are as secure as needed to face the attacks of today.
Do Monica, and then right in the back, and then we'll have to wrap it up.
So there was a spike in ransomware attacks earlier in the summer that seems to have slowed down slightly. To what do you attribute that? And then you did mention there wasn't something specific that caused you to come and bring out this warning. But in terms of Labor Day, is there anything different about it that you would like to highlight, given we haven't seen these kinds of warnings before the 4th of July or anything else more recently?
2 really good questions. First, we've noted the decrease in ransomware, and we think it's an important step in reducing the risk to Americans. There could be a host of reasons for it, so we're noting that trend, and we hope that that trend continues. And with regard to the change and why we're here today, I think it reflects the administration's focus on cyber threats and the recognition that we play a role in all of that. Yes, there are attackers, but they're leveraging vulnerabilities across the networks that we have. We continue to see successful attacks occurring against vulnerabilities for which there are patches. So we want to use the opportunity of this press room and the attention that it gets to ask Americans, to ask organizations to do the steps they need to do to be safe online, even as the government focuses on its efforts. And you've heard our counter-ransomware strategy, working with countries around the world, focusing on the illicit use of cryptocurrency, and pursuing and disrupting ransomware networks around the world. So this really represents the focus we're putting on this issue and the need and the highlight we're saying to Americans to do what they need to do in partnership with the government to be safe online.
Last one in the
If you're a
back.
small company just trying to protect yourself when it comes to ransomware attacks, what is the weakest link attackers will try to exploit? Just a small company, mom and pop shop, you're worried about getting an attack.
Really great question. I would say two things. One is make sure your leadership and IT staff have deployed multi-factor authentication, have a strong password.
Password.
Really a strong password. And then, of course, patching the software that's most important.
Thank you.
Go ahead, last one.
I wanted to ask what you and your team are doing heading into the weekend, whether it's here at the White House through NSC or at CISA. Do you have certain staff on call this weekend? Do you have certain preparations that you're making on your end in addition to the advice you're giving to the public?
Great question. So first, we pulled together the intelligence community to ensure that we were tracking any and all threats and to ensure that they are highly alert for anything related to that. Second, we of course brought together agencies across the government, including key ones like FBI and CISA, to ensure that they were fully postured and fully prepared to be on staff and noting any early signs of any incident so we could rapidly jump on them and respond to them. And finally is this, calling on Americans, organizations to do the steps they need to do to be as safe as possible in advance of what may be an increased threat, as we've seen in history for the reasons I noted during the holiday weekend.